Alright, good morning guys. This morning you're probably going to learn a little bit more about ferro rods than you ever cared and knew. But one thing I want to clear up right now is this is a ferro rod, okay? Not a fire steel. The two are not the same. I know that if you go into Google and you type fire steel into the search engine, you're going to come up with page after page after page of ferro rods as your search result. Fire steel is the part of a flint and steel striker kit that is the actual steel that you use to strike the flint to get your spark. That is fire steel, your striker. This is a ferro rod. Now, I bring this up because it really chaps the hide of some of the old timers, and you get in the wrong circle and start talking about fire steel, and these guys realize you mean your ferrocerium rod. They completely lose faith in your ability, and you quickly become the butt of their jokes for a good long time. So I just wanted to clear that up with you guys, because I know it's common terminology now. Just wanted to point out that that is not the case. Okay guys, ferro rods. They're composed of quite a few elements, you know. Iron. There's also cerium. There's also neodymium, lanthanum, magnesium, and one other that I can almost never remember the name of, Ferrocerium. Ferrocerium. Get that right. Now, these ingredients are in your ferro rod, and of course they all have a purpose. Iron is what gives your ferro rod its strength, makes it where it is hard, gives it its hardness. Okay, cerium. Cerium is the #1 ingredient. Up to 50% of your ferro rod's composition is cerium. The reason this is because the properties of cerium are such that when scraped or scratched, cerium combusts due to friction and bursts into flame. Hence, ferrocerium rod. So that is most of the ingredient. Now, there's also lanthanum. Lanthanum is also flammable, burns at a temperature of only about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, but lanthanum's purpose in a ferrocerium rod, which is your next most common ingredient, up to 36% depending on the manufacturer, lanthanum makes your ferrocerium rod malleable. What that means is that when you scrape your rod, you get peels. I mean, you can take the sharp point of your knife and flip it around and actually carve this, and you will have a shaving of metal come off and curl around on itself. That is because lanthanum is malleable. You have iron for the hardness and lanthanum for the malleability. That means that your ferro rod is nice and hard, but it's still able to peel. Otherwise, you would just get brittle pieces and chunks to break off of this, but it wouldn't actually peel off correctly. Okay, now you have ferrocerium and neodymium. Guys, those are also of the lanthanide group. All of these rare earth metals, like the lanthanum, the neodymium, the ferrocerium, these are actually salts. And ferro rod came about by accident. There was a particular German scientist, I don't remember the name, and if I did, I probably couldn't pronounce it. But anyway, he was extracting thorium from a certain kind of sand. And these compounds were what was left over from that process. And he had it in surplus, had it stacked all over the place, but he didn't really have anything that he could do with it. He was trying to find a use for the stuff, and he realized that they all, burned really well. That they burned at low temperature, and particularly that one in particular, the cerium, would ignite if it was ground or if it was scraped or scratched. So the Ferrocerium rod was born. Okay, now at the end of the list here, you have magnesium. Now, magnesium serves double duty in a ferrocerium rod. Magnesium also is flammable, burns at about 150 degrees, but magnesium also serves kind of the same function as iron and actually gives the rod a little more hardness. Now, this coating, I've seen a lot of things online. I was looking at a forum just this morning, a survivalist forum, and one guy's theory was that these are powder coated somehow at the factory to prevent them from accidentally striking during transit. Now, some other theories I've heard is that they're painted to prevent corrosion. But guys, honestly, I think if you know anything about the properties of these components, these rare earth metals that go into this rod, cerium oxidizes rapidly in an oxygen environment. Lanthanum oxidizes rapidly in an oxygen environment. Neodymium oxidizes rapidly in an oxygen environment. You know, all of these do. Now, looking at this ferro rod, now I've looked at some manufacturers. I went to a manufacturer's website. They have a company, well, they have a manufacturing site in Canada. The company itself is out of Austria, and they have sites all over the world in many different countries. When they manufacture their ferrocerium rods, of course the outside looks just like the inside. They are silver, and that is because these compounds, these rare earth metals that this rod is composed of, are also silver. Now, something else that I noticed several years back. Take a ferrocerium rod like this one. You guys can see that I've used this rod quite a bit, struck many a fire with it. But because of the properties of the compounds that are in this rod, what it's composed of, if I put this rod away, tuck it into a drawer, leave it for 8 months or a year, and go to retrieve it later, you will notice that the surface area of this rod that you have already struck will be the same color as the rest of the rod was when it was brand new. Why? Because this is an oxide coating. It is not intentionally done at the factory. Now, I have to tell you, this last part, I need to correct myself, because this is just my personal opinion, because I haven't found anything to the contrary. This is just what I am deducing by looking at the chemical compounds or the mineral compounds, rare earth that is in this, and how they react with an oxygen environment. But I believe, let's put it that way, that the coating on a ferro rod is nothing more than these various rare earth metals oxidizing and forming this oxide coating on the metal. And I know this wasn't factory done because I can replicate it by just leaving this exposed to air. The rest of the rod, where I've already struck it, will do the same exact thing. So, you know, guys, I hope that clears something up for you, because there have been a lot of conjecture and a lot of speculation. You know, I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm saying that I think I'm correct. Now, if anybody happens to absolutely know different and quote me sources in the comment section, by all means, feel free to let me know, because there is a lot of heated debate on survivalist forums, bushcrafting forums, and all this kind of stuff about what this coating is, where it comes from. Is it paint? Is it, you know, black powder coating? Do they do something to it at the factory? I don't believe so. Now, I've also read on a lot of forums and stuff, people say, first thing you need to do when you get your ferro rod is to scrape all of that off. And you paint your ferro rod with clear fingernail polish to protect it and to keep it from oxidizing. Okay, well, first of all, if this is a natural part of the oxidization process and your ferro rod's just going to do this, and matter of fact, if I look at my rod here right now, where I struck fire just yesterday, it's already starting to oxidize and it's going dark like this. Of course, I live on Earth, so I'm in an oxygen environment, and also the last few days has been a high humidity environment. These things also react to water to form hydroxides. Lanthanum hydroxide, you know? So that's just one more thing that's going to tarnish your ferro rod. Now, something urgent that I think I need to point out to you guys, I was reading on one survivalist forum where somebody took a ferro rod and they put it in their gear, they put it in their kit, and hadn't looked at it, hadn't checked on it in years. They went back to get the ferro rod and they found the handle and dust. These things, guys, have a shelf life. That is something that I need to point out. This stuff oxidizes. What happens to iron when it oxidizes? You get rust. Iron rusts over a long enough period of time, you end up with no iron. Same thing with every other piece, every other component of this rod. This rod will completely decompose into a pile of useless oxides. Okay, now you guys that have packed a big lighter in your kit, I also read online on the survivalist forum about a man. He picked up 20 or 30 big lighters and he put them away thinking, I'll have these when I need them. Now, 3 years later, he went through his 20, 30 big lighters and over half of them no longer had flints. Think about it, those flints are small. His flints degraded and decomposed and were no longer there. They all still had their fuel, they had their lighter fluid, they had the gas, but the flints were completely gone. They oxidized and disintegrated. So guys, your big lighter that you've got in your kit, if it's been in there for a long time, it's not going to stay good forever. It also has a shelf life. If you've packed a bug out bag, something like that, my suggestion personally would be, if you're carrying a lighter in any kind of kit like that, either use it up, or if it's sat for more than, I would say, a year to 18 months max, take that lighter out, throw it away, and replace it with a new one. They do have a shelf life. I just thought that was something else I needed to bring up because a lot of people are not aware. Myself, I personally was not aware that they would break down to that point until just recently. So I thought it was a good idea to put that out to you so that you are also aware. Now, a ferro rod like this is 3/8 by 4 inch. It would take probably a long time. But you get on forums and you start looking, and guys have pulled their ferro rods out and they haven't disintegrated completely, but there's a lot of posts, help, I don't know what to do, I don't know what's wrong, my ferro rod is pitted. It looks like something has chewed on my ferro rod. There are these little holes and little pits all over the surface. Now, when a ferro rod gets into that condition, you can still use it, you can still strike it. But it's getting ready to be time for a new rod. And guys, these are cheap. Buy one of these, put it in your kit, bring it out though and use it, you know. It takes practice with these tools. This device right here is not near as easy to use as what it looks like it is on a YouTube video done by Dave Canterbury or Bear Grylls or anybody else. It's not as easy as it looks. So, you know, use your ferro rods, practice with them. They're cheap. This one, you know, $5, up to 3,000 strikes. Good sparks every time. I've built dozens of fires with this rod, and it's still going strong. It's probably got hundreds more fires in it. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that bit of information out to you guys. There's probably something I forgot. If there is, I'll release a part 2 to this and fill you in on anything that comes to mind. But, you know, for now, I think that was sufficient. I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. Oh, no I haven't. One more thing. Guys, most of your ferro rods, I know every website you go to in a search engine will tell you that they have the best rods. Truth is, 80% of the ferro rods that are on the market all come from one manufacturer, no matter who the distributor is. The ferro rod you get from this location will be the exact ferro rod you get from that location and hundreds of other locations. There are different types. Each manufacturer has its own recipe. Some of them have a little less of one and a little more of another on the rare earth metals. Things like that. Some of them are softer, more malleable, like, you know, the cerum and the lanthanum. The lanthanum is the one that comes to mind. Some rods have a little more iron, a little more magnesium, which makes them harder, but less lanthanum, which means if you go to strike that rod, it's going to be harder to shave sparks off of there. You're going to get smaller sparks that maybe aren't quite, they're still 3,000 degree spark. They're still good and hot, but they don't burn as long. So you need to be right up on your tinder, and you may take 5, 6, 7, 8 repetitive quick strikes to get one to take. Now, on the other hand, there are some ferro rods that are soft and they shave like butter. You take that ferro rod and you run the spine of your knife across there on the back and shave off the sparks, and them things just burn white, hot, and molten, will drop all the way to the ground, hit the ground, and set the grass on fire. It's just a different composition. Now, the reason I illustrate that and bring that up is because you buy this ferro rod from one supplier. Well, it strikes like that. It's soft and big, meaty sparks that burn hot for a long duration. Well, they change suppliers on you because they can get them cheaper somewhere else. They don't notify you, the customer. So the next ferro rod you get won't be that way. It'll be harder to strike. The sparks just won't be as big. They won't burn as long. That is where you have to be adaptable to your situation. Don't grab your ferro rod and use it all up, buy another one and throw it in your pack and assume, I know how to use these, so I'm going to just put this one away. It doesn't work like that, guys. The next ferro rod you buy from the same place may not be the same rod. It may work totally differently. It may strike differently, throw different sparks, and may take a little bit of adjustment in your technique and your mentality with the way that you make fire. So that is another thing, while I was thinking about it, definitely I needed to bring up, because that is very important. Don't make any assumptions, guys. When you get out there in the real world, and if you're using this for your fire source, for your ignition source, granted, you should always have 3 or 4 ways to make fire with you at all times in that kind of a situation. But don't assume that this ferro rod is going to work like your last one. That is not how it works, guys. They change manufacturers for various reasons, and you're not notified that, hey, we're no longer getting our ferro rods from the Ontario, Canada location. We are now getting them from American Elements out of Los Angeles, California, who also manufactures rare earth materials. And their recipe, their composition is maybe a little different. These rods may function differently. They're not going to tell you that. You have to know that. You have to be aware of it. Okay? And on that note, I'm getting out of here. This video is going to be a pretty good sized one. I'm going to upload it as soon as I get back to the house. I thank you guys for your views. I thank you for your comments. And I thank you guys who have subscribed to the channel. I'm glad to have you. Like I said, if there's anything that you have questions about, feel free to ask. And if you have anything that you'd like to add, or maybe something you could teach me, or something that I didn't cover, by all means, let me know. But thank you guys very much for your time, and I will catch you on the next video.